Have your emotions ever gotten the best of you? Mine did when I met a member of the Von Trapp family. I kind of freaked out.
You're listening to Travel FOMO, a podcast for people self-diagnosed with wanderlust.
Welcome to the Travel FOMO podcast. We're here talking about a fall favorite location, Vermont, the state of Vermont. And I'm joined today by my husband and the man I fall for every fall, Jamin.
She means literal fall, like falls down.
I mean, fall in love. I fall in love with you regularly.
She also falls, literally.
Hey, be nice. This is not going to go well. I can already tell this episode is just going to be chocked full of me defending myself. Okay, guys, let's set the scene. We just come from Shenandoah National Park. It's October. We have come from Virginia, and now we're headed towards Vermont. Fall is hitting the Northeast, and we were really wanting to experience it in, I guess you could say, the most classic American way, which is to be in the Northeast.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly.
We had set up our gap year adventure in the United States with a couple of things in mind. One, seeing the northern national parks at the only time you can during the middle of summer.
Yeah.
And then two, being in the Northeast in the fall. So we were like coming right into where we were supposed to be.
Exactly. And to top it off, our friends, Jeremy and Casey, were also having a weekend adventure here. So we were super excited that we were going to get to meet up with them because we were lonely. I was lonely.
We had been traveling for a long time. And I feel like especially in the U.S., because we're going to so many national parks and so many remote places, it's not a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so it was definitely something we were excited about, to hang out with friends. And so excited, in fact, that as we were looking to leave Shenandoah and sort of mapping out our route, we realized that if we drove really hard, we could make it in a day. Originally in our plan, we had left space where we were going to stay at a Cracker Barrel or somewhere like that overnight. And we just thought, man, it'd be so much better if we just like pushed through and got there. And so we called the RV park and we were like, hey, can we come a day early? And they're like, yes, come on. And so we're like, perfect. We got up super early, got out of Shenandoah, and because it was a travel day,
something had to go wrong.
Disaster had to strike. And it didn't until the very, 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 very end.
We thought we were like, wow, it really ended up to go well. Yeah. This is like all
fine travel day. No mishaps. This is perfect.
Yeah.
Until we got there, and they were like, "Oh, we don't have a spot for you yet."
I'm like, I was livid. I was like, we literally worked this out with you yesterday before we decided to haul ourselves up here.
Yeah. And they ended up sticking us in a tent spot. So we had to like back our like rig into a tent spot with no hookups, no electricity, none of that stuff. The other kind of really frustrating thing was that because thought we were coming into our RV spot and going to be able to set up, we hadn't stopped anywhere to get any food or anything. So we realized, okay, we have to unhook tonight completely.
Yeah.
So that we can drive and go get food and that other kind of things like that. And then tomorrow we're going to have to hook up again.
Right.
Move into our actual site.
A couple yards over.
And do this whole thing again, which if you're an RVer, you know that like it's not difficult, it's not hard to do, but it's a pain to like move spots.
And time intensive.
Yeah, and takes time and you get dirty and all the things. And so we were pretty frustrated, and especially after a long day of driving, for that to be the way it ended up was just like, oh.
Yeah. Well, especially for them to say your site will be ready a day early. And you're like, awesome. This is great.
Perfect.
Like,
Thanks for
And they're like,
accommodating us.
oh, we accidentally gave it to somebody. And you're like, really? You could have, like, you supposedly gave it to me, but okay.
Well, I remember too seeing our spot and realizing that the people that they gave it to were in a van. And I was like, they're in a van. Like, put them in the tent spot and let us have our RV spot. But whatever.
Yeah, but at least they didn't charge us for that night.
That's
so.
true. That's true. They let us stay in the tent spot for free, which was good.
Yeah. And then it all didn't matter when we caught up with our friends.
Yes.
It was so fun to be with Jeremy and Casey. We had been like, bopping around the East Coast, and some of that, if you looked at a map, some of the places you've heard us, the order of which we've gone hasn't always made sense, but we really wanted to time things out to be with them in Vermont at exactly this time. So some of that bopping around was just to kind of like accommodate, like getting to be with them, and it was worth everything. Like, they had an incredible place that they stayed at, and we walked in the door and it was like, oh wow, it was so, first of all, it was just so good to see them, and then the place they're staying, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And we hung outside by the fire and just caught up on life, and then the next day we went hiking. There's a hike called the Lye Brook Falls Trail, and it was just beautiful, and the four of us got to all be together, and actually being around them too, it made me really miss Charlie. And like I remember hiking with him in like Glacier National Park, and this little guy was just like, oh, he'd walk on these trails with us, and he'd just be like, I just need a minute. And he just needed these little breaks, and he'd be like, I just need a minute. And it was the sweetest thing.
Something else that we really enjoyed in our time in Vermont was getting to go up to Stowe. So we actually moved campsites and drove further north to Stowe, Vermont. The Nelsons had to go back home, so they didn't get to come on this part of it with us, but we got to explore this picturesque little Vermont town of Stowe, which was really kind of crazy in and of itself. There is a trail there that we hiked called the Stowe Pinnacle Trail. And as we'd been going through national parks, we'd been listening to a podcast called National Park After Dark. And we heard about this trail through National Park After Dark. And so we actually got to hike it. And it has a really cool story attached to it. There are two dogs. I think they're golden retrievers, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so two golden retrievers whose owners live there locally. And they loved to hike this trail. And they would go hike the trail on their own every day.
Every day.
And the owners, the top. Right, like all the way to the pinnacle. The owners would try to like keep them. They would get out of the fence. They would like find a way to escape and go hike the trail. And so eventually they were just like, okay, we're just going to let them do it. And so people would talk all the time about seeing these two dogs hiking up to the pinnacle.
Learned their names and everything. Like hikers knew them. And
yeah, so they're these local legends. And we asked a few people, and there were some locals. Like when we made it to the pinnacle, we were talking to people because there's actually a lot of people just kind of hanging out at the top. Mm-hmm. The views are amazing, especially that time of year. All of the leaves are changing, so you're just looking out over all these rolling hills with all these leaves, all the fall stuff that you want. And we talked to a few people that were locals, and they said that they hadn't seen the dogs in a while. Aww. One of them knew that one of them had passed, and they weren't sure about the other one, but they hadn't seen them in a while, but they had seen them before, and that it was a real thing.
It was a real thing.
And
I was so sad. Cool. I know, I was so sad that we didn't get to meet the dogs, because that was literally the reason for hiking, because I thought this sounds so sweet.
Right. Yeah. Like that was really, really cool. Like something that I've never heard of on another trail, of like, oh yeah, these two dogs that just hike the trail every day.
And remind me, I'm pretty sure you could see the town of Stowe below us.
You could,
right?
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was really, because there's this great white chapel with this big white steeple, or big steeple. But it's this beautiful white chapel. And I'm think that you could see it from where we were. I definitely know you could see part of the town, but it was just a really beautiful view. And man, the leaves were turning, and it was, that was a great way to.
And a nice hike, like not too difficult, but enough to be a challenge and enough to feel like you'd done something.
Yeah.
But not something that just like wrecked your day because you were so tired after, or that took forever.
It was really busy.
There
were a lot of people. Yeah. There was like a group of older women that were like in their 60s or 70s, and they were hiking it, and I was like impressed.
Yeah, they were getting after it.
Yeah, that was fun. Okay, but let's get to the real stuff. Let's get to the meat of this podcast, babe.
The reason Hilarie got out of bed today was for this story.
You guys, we got to go to the Von Trapp Family Lodge. They're in Stowe, Vermont. Okay, so if you're a fan of musicals and the Sound of Music, then you want to tune in. You want to go to Stowe, Vermont one day, because if you know the story of the Sound of Music, a nun named Maria in the 1940s meets Captain Von Trapp, and she is sent to his house to take care of his kids, his 7 kids, and she teaches them to sing, and he hates it. But he falls in love with her, and they get married, and they flee Austria because they're like in the Alps, and they flee Austria to come to America during World War II, and we're trying to find a safe place to be. And the story is, it's kind of a fun story, right? It's a magical story, I guess you could say, that you're just like, who would ever dream of this story? And it's a real story with real people behind it. There was a real Maria and a real Captain Von Trapp, and they really had kids, and they really sang. And when they came to America, they actually didn't know anything else to do but keep singing. So they toured America, and then they tried to figure out where they were going to land when it was all said and done. And they decided that Vermont was it reminded them a lot like of Austria and of their homeland. And so they set up their home there and created a lodge where they would host people, kind of like a camp, really. And anyway, turned into a ski lodge eventually. Now there's a brewery, there's all kinds of things. And that is why I was so excited to go to Stowe, Vermont, to the Von Trapp Family Lodge. Just the whole story. I just had to share a little bit of that story because I've watched the movie growing up, been in the play 4 times. I love this story. And so it was really powerful to get to be there. Yeah. Why don't you tell them a little bit about it?
So there is a lodge, and separate from the lodge, there's a brewery. We actually went to the brewery first because we wanted to have lunch. We had some pretzels and some beer. They had like a big outdoor sitting area, which was really nice. The weather was perfect. It is in that Austrian Swiss chalet style of like lodge, where you think like big, like wooden lodge with all the stuff. They had like the very, German style beers that you think of, and pretzels. We really wanted to stay at the lodge. By we, I mean Hilarie.
Like stay overnight.
Right. Because you can, like it's a functioning lodge where a lot of people go and stay.
It's pet friendly too.
And was pet friendly. But it was $500 to $600 a night.
Woo!
And that was not in the budget.
It was not in the budget.
And I think there might be times a year where it might not be quite that high, but this was the fall, very Vermont-y time of year where everyone wants to be up there. And so they were at a premium. But you can actually ski in and out of the lodge. So there's a ski resort there. All kinds of stuff. It's very, very Austrian, very Switzerland. Like you get a little taste of it, and you definitely recognize that they were recreating a little bit of home. Yeah. There in Vermont, which was pretty cool.
Even down to like the little lambs that they had, like in the pasture by the lodge, and like I want to say goats maybe, but I can't say for sure. It just felt very much like, I mean, honestly, like you were in like Austria or Switzerland.
Yeah, it was very, very reminiscent of that. And especially for us, like we'd been recently to Austria and Switzerland. And so you really did see that similarity carry over.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I loved it. And then, okay, so we went inside the lodge and I'm just, I'm pretty excited. I am realizing that I'm like the youngest person there.
By a lot.
By a lot. And I'm not young.
And we're not young.
So I was like, oh, okay. Like, this is, I've got like some mature taste. And so we go inside the lodge, we find the gift shop, and just to clarify, like it's been around a while, so it's a little dated. And we go down and I think like there was like this moment where Jamin was a little disappointed by it all. But I'm kind of like trying to keep, my spirits up because I'm like, it is what I wanted to come see. Whether or not, whatever it is, doesn't matter. But like, I've been wanted to be here for years. And so in this gift shop, I find like, Edelweiss seeds, and I'm buying little trinkets for my mom and my sister, and, thinking about like what would be good in somebody's stocking at Christmas. And I'm so excited. I get myself a hat that says Von Trapp Family on it. I'm, really excited. I find a book. I ended up getting a book that Maria Von Trapp had actually written, and, which I'm of course blanking on the exact name of the book, but I think it's the only one she wrote. And I get up to the front to pay for it, and there's a guy there while they're checking me out, and they're like, do you want him to sign the book? And I was like, sure. Did he write it? Like, okay. And they're like, and I haven't exactly noticed that I've been picking out, there's a couple different books you can pick from, but I didn't realize that the book that I picked was actually written by Maria Von Trapp. So, they say, and so I'm asking stupid questions like, did he write the book? And they're like, no. He said, no, but, my grandma did. And I was like, oh, that's neat. And then I realized what he meant by that. And I realized that was Maria Von Trapp's grandson, and he's signing my book right now. And I walk out of the store and I just start like tearing up, and my eyes start glassing over, and I'm just like, this is really, I can't believe, one, that like her family's still around, that they still want to be a part of her legacy. And I just get really emotional, and it would seem really like not a big deal to the average person, but I had been imagining coming here since I was a little kid. And since I remember, I believe I was doing like a geography lesson, and we all got assigned different states, and I had Vermont, and it led me to dig in. And then I found out that there was a ski lodge there that the Von Trapp family owns. And from that point on, I'd already become, my family was snow skiing at the time, and I knew like I want to go snow skiing there at their ski lodge. And so I'd always had imagined this in my mind, and yeah. And then suddenly I just got really emotional. I felt like so special. And then Jamin embarrassed me by really like honing in on the fact that I was crying. And I was crying.
If you want to see the emotional response that I live with on a daily basis, you can go out to the YouTube channel and watch Hilarie cry about meeting the grandson of a person that she played in a musical one time.
Honestly, I think it was a lot of things. It was like a childhood dream, but then it was also like one of those moments where you realize that like you're living out your dreams. Like we were literally going, it was gap year. Like we were taking a gap year. We were traveling the world. We were doing all the things that we'd only ever dreamed of doing. And it was like this moment of like, I hadn't always thought about San Sebastian, Spain. I didn't know it existed. I hadn't always dreamed of going to some places that we'd been, but I dreamed of going here.
Yeah.
And it got to happen because we were brave enough to do gap year. And anyway, so I think that was part of the emotion.
So you have been on the Sound of Music tour in Austria.
Yeah.
And you have been to the Von Trapp Lodge in Vermont.
Mm-hmm.
Which of those, if you were going to send a Sound of Music fan to one of those, which one would it be?
Oh, that's actually really hard. Because if you go to Vermont, you get to meet family members.
Of course.
And they have a lot of tours. Like, it's very heavy on, there are a ton of things you can do. They'll show you how to make, they made a lot of maple syrup on their land. And so they'll show you like how they make maple syrup and like a bunch of different things. They have things all day long that you can do. You can go on hikes with family members, like all kinds of stuff. It's really, really cool. But then Salzburg is, it's Austria. So, right. I would probably say go to Austria where it was really happening and try to go to like some of the actual places that they lived and stuff. I went on a tour, which was great, but I would also, if I were back in Salzburg, I would go to some of the places like the Abbey, and some of the things like that, the Abbey that she really lived in and maybe where they really had a home,
Mm-hmm.
and instead I kind of got to see some of those where they filmed the movie, if that makes sense. It was kind of like a movie tour versus like a real life tour of where the family really lived. And so I would focus more on the family because after reading that book, oh my goodness, the history is incredible. The book was everything I hoped for and more. Like I cried a lot, you might recall.
Shocker.
I literally cried. I finished the book. At one point we had COVID later on in gap year. And so we're hibernating in our Airstream. And I was literally wrapped up in a ball, like reading, and just crying. I was so shocked at how much drama is not in the movie. The movie tells a fabulous story, but it's such a small piece of their story.
Mm-hmm.
In my head, I was reading this book thinking, where's part 2, part 3, part 4? Oh my goodness. The story gets more dramatic and they just have, it's so extraordinary. And Maria, some of my favorite highlights. Okay. Highlight reel. Maria truly, truly didn't want to marry the captain. And I think in the movie, I see this scene where she's crying and she's like, oh, I just, he's so horrible. And I'm like, I just didn't believe that much. And I love Julie Andrews, but like, it wasn't that compelling to me. But in the book, it was so compelling that she just absolutely didn't want to marry the captain, but he had started to grow fond of her and had asked her to marry him. And she went back to the Abbey to get advice, and Mother Superior gave it some really deep thought. And so she's basically coming to her Mother Superior saying like, he asked me to marry him. I don't feel that same way about him. I love these kids though. What should I do? And she's crying, and Mother Superior thinks about it. She leaves the room for a while, like I want to say an hour or two, comes back and told her that she had been praying and she really did feel like God wanted Maria to marry the captain, for the most part to be a mother to these kids who are motherless now. She tells Maria this, and Maria is just falls on the floor on her knees crying because she knows she's gonna do it, right? Like she doesn't want to do this, but this is like the ultimate sacrifice. And she really thought she was gonna be a nun. She had really devoted herself to being a nun, and made all of these commitments. And then this person, Mother Superior, whom she's committed this life to, is now telling her like, you don't have to commit to this life. God doesn't actually want you to live this life. I think that he might want you to go be a mother to these kids. And my favorite thing is this part where Maria, and this is keep in mind, this is not the movie. This is like the true story. Maria's on the floor, on her knees, holding Mother Superior's hand, crying into her hand. And this whole time, Mother Superior is trying to explain, what she thinks she should be doing. And Maria's looking at Mother Superior's ring, and she has a ring on it, on her finger, that says, God's will hath no why. And she just knew when she read that, she was like, God doesn't have to explain himself for this to be what he wants for me. And I just thought that quote right there, like, pretty much sums up a lot of things that we might go through in life. And it might be God's will and we might not really understand it, but we might still have to walk down a certain path. and live it out. And so I really want a ring, Jamin, that says God's will hath no why. I just love that. So, and also, can I say that like the YouTube video that we have out there, when you and I went back to watch the footage of you putting the camera in my face saying like, tell us why you're crying, I started crying watching myself cry because it is so powerful. I just love this story. And so it's really sweet.
Yeah. So if you want to see that, go out to the YouTube channel. If you want to see a movie about the story of a girl that was so annoying that nuns tried to get rid of her and a family tried to get rid of her and nuns tried to get rid of her again, go watch The Sound of Music.
He's so cynical, guys.
Oh, I mean, there's literally a song about how to solve a problem like Maria.
I know, but I don't think that was real. That's the movie.
They sang it to her at her wedding.
That's
to
true.
let her know how annoying she was.
In the movie, that's true. Right. Isn't that sad? Can you imagine? It's like you're walking on the aisle and they're like, well, this really annoying girl down here.
Finally pawned her off. After we did all the Von Trapping, we actually stopped on our way back to our RV park at the cider barn.
Yeah.
To like consume just a little bit more fall and a little bit more Vermont.
Super fun.
It was really fun. They have all things cider there. They make cider there. They have cider donuts there, cider everything there.
Yeah. Overall, I feel like the personality of Vermont is just really cute. It's like the simple life, you know?
Yeah, I agree. It's very Hallmarky.
Yeah.
Like it's like stepping into a Hallmark card. It's all the fall things, which if you're like us and we grew up in, Oklahoma and Texas, and you really don't experience fall. Mm-hmm. And the weather just sort of like changes.
Shifts really fast.
Right. And stuff just goes from green to brown. Mm-hmm. And there might be a few trees that you see some colorful leaves on, but I honestly had never really gotten fall. And like, what's the big deal about fall? And seeing fall in Vermont definitely changes that.
It's like you see what everybody's trying to replicate a little bit.
Yes.
It's kind of like, oh, okay. I mean, I get why everybody like loves the idea of fall because this is what it is really supposed to be like.
Right. This is what they want. When people are looking forward to fall, this is what they're actually looking for.
Well, some things we didn't get to do that I would recommend that are very fall-y is like a corn maze would be so fun, or like a hay ride, or like all of those are really like a pumpkin patch. Like that would be, I think, really fun. But we just felt a little too old for that, I guess. I don't know. We just didn't have enough time.
Yeah, there wasn't enough time because we had to hit the road and head south to Charleston.
Yay! We love Charleston so much.
Charleston was really cool. A lot of history there, a lot of great food there. So much influence on the country in so many ways that we didn't realize but got to learn about. It was really cool. Really excited to tell you all about Charleston in our next episode.
That's right. We're going south and we're not bouncing back up again. We've been bouncing around a little bit. So
our route will make a lot more sense now.
Yes, exactly. Well, guys, you can find us out there on social media. We are on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. You can also find our videos out there on YouTube. They complement the podcast episodes that you hear here. And you can also reach us by email.
Yeah, reach out to us at travelfomopodcast@gmail.com. If you have other fall things that you like to do, share them with us. We'd like to share them here. Let us know what are your favorite things, like maybe brown paper packages.
Raindrops on roses? Oh my goodness, you're so cute. I love that you threw that in there. You guys, that's Jamin for you. He's like full of it. I love it. Yes, email us at travelfomopodcast@gmail.com and tell us what advice that you have. Tell us what your favorite things are. Life is short, guys.
Wander well.